Hey guys, it's Becky with Design Bundles, and I am back again today to talk to you about your Cameo 4. Today we are working in Silhouette Studio and we are going to cover how to make files and fonts that are meant to use for sketching and etching. Now I know what you're thinking, Becky, can't I use just any design and any font? Well, technically yes and no. You'll have to stay tuned to find out.
All right, guys, so let's talk about fonts and designs for sketching. Now, when I talk about sketching, we're talking about sketch pens, we're talking about the foil quill, we're talking about the new Cricut transfer foil, etching. There are a lot of reasons why you would need to set up designs of this type. But typically speaking, it's because most designs are set up to cut. And so for example, if I'm going to cut out a font, my cut line is going to be around the outside of the letter and it leaves the inside blank because normally that is filled with vinyl or HTV or cardstock or something like that, right? You only need to cut those out. So that doesn't translate well into sketch fonts because I want that design to be filled in. Otherwise, it looks a little weird, right? And that can be frustrating for beginners. Now, Silhouette Studio does this beautifully, so that's what we're going to cover today. But I also want to show you there are actually some really awesome single line fonts and single line designs. Now, single line designs are less common, and so are single line fonts, but they are gaining more popularity with the number of tools that are coming out that use single line fonts. So for example, this one is called Dear Agatha, and this will demonstrate a little bit of what I mean. If I were to send this to be sketched out on either my Silhouette or a different cutting machine, this is the outline that I would get. It would just be the outline. It would not be filled in. Okay. Now a single line font, let me show you. Dear Agatha is going to be just that. It is a single line font. There we go. So there is no outline, there's no double layer, it is literally a single line. So what that means is that if I were to sketch this using the single line font, then I wouldn't have the double lines, it would just sketch it out as a single line. Now, I know that's probably hard to wrap your mind around if you're not very experienced with using sketch pens or sketch designs, but this is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Now, I did also do a video on the new Cricut foil transfer kit, and this is actually the font that I used, and I found a single line file that went really well with it, and the project turned out great. So, that's something, if you want to jump over and check that out when we get done, you can see that in action and see a solid example of it. But let's go ahead and talk about how we are going to take normal designs and normal fonts and turn them into sketch fonts. So let's start out with, let's do something really simple. Create. Because we all like to create. I'm going to make it larger so that you can see. And I actually want to pick a really bold font. That way you can really see the intricacies of what's about to happen. So I'm going to go down. Now I just want to say this is a designer edition feature. Now you do get some sketch functions. Here's our sketch icon here. Line effects panel is what they call it now. You do get some functions, from what I understand, with the basic edition. But if you do not see all of this loveliness here, then and this is something you use a lot, you may want to consider upgrading. So just another feature. And of course, we have a comparison video on all the features that you get when you upgrade. So let's talk about the different styles that you can fill. There, of course, is a grid effect. There is a stripe effect. There's the rings to go from in to out or out to in, depending on how you look at it. Same thing, except you get more of a fill instead of based on the shape of the letter. This is more of a scribble. a curly, a crosshatch, which go ahead and make a note. Crosshatch is my favorite. And this, of course, is another scribble and a little bit messier of a scribble. And then, of course, you do have edge effects too. You can still pair up an edge. So definitely lots of cute things going on here. What I like to do, I like to set up my crosshatch and my edge. Okay. Now, a lot of times I'm etching on acrylic. That's another video I have lined up for you guys this week. So just a little plug, make sure you subscribe. You can get that video too. I like to do the crosshatch, and then I like to decrease the spacing and see how that gets thicker and thicker and thicker until it looks like it's filled in. Now, of course, depending on how much time you have to dedicate to this project, no, it is actually dependent upon the tip or the format that you're using to do this design. I would not go all the way down to 0.005 unless I was etching in acrylic or perhaps etching on metal, which I do already have that video up for you guys. But you can, like, if you can use a Sharpie marker, okay? So there are even other markers, but like a Sharpie, if I'm using a third-party holder and I'm using a Sharpie, that's going to be a pretty thick tip. So it's not really going to do me any good. Actually, it will probably oversaturate my paper with ink if I try to fill it in this much. So you're going to have to do some testing and determine exactly how much of a thickness you need. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. So the more I go down, it's just that they get closer and closer together. Now, if I'm wanting to fill this in with an ink pen, okay, maybe I need to go pretty far down. All right. So, of course, that will be completely up to you. And once you're done, all right, so let's get this down just a little bit more. All right, 0.02. Let's just stop there. And you can change the angle if you want. For the crosshatch, for this project, it doesn't really make a huge difference. And then I'm going to do release effects. Now, just to give you a little insight, you can come into the advanced line effects. You can also affect the spacing, the angle, the sweep, and the offset here. These are not features that I use a whole lot, but if you're into experimenting around with the different sketch effects, it's definitely worth checking out this panel over here. But for now, I'm going to release effects. And basically what that is going to do is it's going to lock those in. Those are now not editable. I cannot change those any farther. And that is important, especially a lot of people use Silhouette Studio to set up designs for other cutting machines. So for example, if this was a design I wanted to etch on my Cricut, then I would need to make sure that I release that effect. If this is a design that I'm going to share with a friend, make sure that you release that effect, okay? Let's go ahead and take a look at a design, and I just want to show you how awesome that is. So File and Merge. Of course, I just scored a whole bunch of Christmas items on my dollar sale. Really loved that. Spent way too much money. But there is actually one design. I'm not saying that the other designs aren't good, but I literally bought this bundle, because it was $1. But I bought this bundle specifically for this design. I just really liked it. I thought it was a really good design. So I'm going to group all these together. Control G. Here, let's get rid of that bad boy. All right. So Control G, group that together. Now let's take off the fill and put on a line color. Now you can see the fill was misleading. Even though it filled in and it looked like it was filled in, it is not, in fact, filled in with lines. So that means if I had sketched that out or tried to engrave it, then I would have only received the outline. So I'm going to come in with my crosshatch and I'm going to decrease that spacing. I'm going to turn on my edge line. Believe it or not, having that edge line, even though it's just a straight line, it really makes a difference. And then I can release effects. All right, now that is done. I mean, it's literally that easy. So as long as you have Designer Edition or higher, then these options are available to you, and this is how you're going to get a complete fill. Now, let's just say this kind of fill is going to take a long time. All right, so if you're doing something like addressing envelopes, then you're going to want to choose yourself a single line font. All right. And you can actually go into font bundles and you can search single line fonts and the designs will come up for you. But if you have a font or a design in mind and you're using this, like I said, you're going to etch it, you're going to use the foil quill, you're going to use the Cricut transfer kit, or you're just going to simply sketch it out on paper, or I mean, there's a million things. Surprisingly, there are about a million things that you can use this format for. Obviously not for cutting. You don't want to try to cut this. This will literally tear whatever material to shreds, but you can now etch this in whatever you need to etch it for, and it will be nice and filled in for you. So hopefully this tutorial has made sense, because like I said, I feel like it's really, really easy in Silhouette Studio, and now you know.
So how do you feel about the sketching and etching designs? I think it's actually pretty easy, and I really appreciate this is one of the features of Silhouette Studio that really draws people in, because this is not something that you can do in a lot of software, and it's so easy. And of course, if you have that business edition, okay, then you can export this as an SVG and use it in any type of cutting machine that you have. So really important tools to add to your crafting arsenal. And of course, I'm going to give you a sneak peek. If you have not seen this video yet, we are following it up with etching our very own lighted base acrylic. So if you recognize this design, it's the one we just set up. So now you have to check out part 2. All right, guys, I really appreciate you stopping by today. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. That's the 3 words of the day, the 3 words I like to hear. And, you know, of course, we always have a lot of really neat ideas, but if you have any video requests that you want to see, make sure you leave that in the comments below. And I would just love to hear your opinion on the tutorial and what you think about the sketch and etch feature in Silhouette Studio. All right, guys, thanks again. I'm going to wrap it up, but we will see you next time.